So OpenAI just announced a bunch of different tools around web search, file search, computer use, and the major agents SDK, which is in a way a competitor to Crew AI's agent SDK. And I built a very simple research agent that actually uses web search and the agent framework by OpenAI in order to find the news and for me. I'm using Streamlit to show the UI, and this is still not perfect. So if I click here, what I want is to go and add the research topic here and help me answer the follow-up questions. But this, like I said, is very early right now. Either ways, the documentation is not very clear, especially for SDK. So I had to spend a lot of time to figure out how this really works. If you're not familiar with what agents are essentially pieces of code that help you automate certain things on a day-to-day basis. Here are some of the key concepts that OpenAI has mentioned. An LLM is configured with instructions, tools, hands-offs, and guardrails. Tools are essentially things that agents can use for external help. Context is essentially some knowledge of the previous steps. Output types is the format of the output you want the agent to give. Handoffs are essentially ways for agents to delegate or switching the conversation to a different agent. And streaming is essentially getting partial data as the agent is still generating text. Tracing is for logs, and guardrails is to ensure that all the bad outputs are filtered before the agents process them. So again, very similar to what Crew AI also does. Crew AI also has an agent, task, tools, the context, the memory. It does have the output, expected output format too. It does have the delegation true or false as well. I don't know if it has streaming, but it does have tracing, and I don't know if it has guardrails, right? So essentially, this is more on the lines for developers. If you're a non-developer, it's good to know that they've announced something on the agentic framework standpoint. And let's take a look at some of these demos here to really understand what they're trying to build at this point of time.
Called the web search tool. The web search tool allows our models to access information from the internet so that your responses and the output that you get is up to date and factual. A web search tool is the same tool that powers ChatGPT search, and it's powered by a fine-tuned model under the hood. So this is the fine-tuned GPT-4o or 4o mini that is really good at looking at large amounts of data retrieved from the web, finding the relevant pieces of information, and then clearly citing it in its response. In a benchmark that measures these type of things, which is called Simple QA, you can see that GPT-4o hits a high score of state-of-the-art score of 90%.
So just to give you an understanding, we will be using these two models for doing our search. And then we'll be using GPT-4o mini to basically generate the summary of what we've just searched.
Cool. Steve, do you want to tell us about the second one?
Yeah, the second tool is actually my favorite tool, and this is the file search tool. Now, we launched the file search tool last year in the Assistance API as a way for developers to upload, chunk, embed their documents, and then RAG really easily over those documents. Now, we're really excited to be launching two new features in the file search tool today. The first is metadata filtering. So with metadata filtering, you can add attributes to your files to be able to easily filter them down to just the ones that are the most relevant for your query. The second is a direct search endpoint. So now you can directly search your vector stores without your queries being filtered through the model first.
Nice.
So again, this is something that you can also do in Python, but the fact that you can now directly do it on OpenAI, it's cool. What I'm really excited about is the computer use API, or rather computer use. So let's quickly take a look at that.
You have, and the third tool that we are launching is the computer use tool. The computer use tool is operator in the API, but it allows you to control the computers that you are operating. So this could be a virtual machine, it could be a legacy application that just has a graphical user interface and you have no API access to it. If you want to automate those kind of tasks and build applications on that, you can use the computer use tool, which comes with the computer use model. So this is the same model that is used by Operator in ChatGPT. It has SOTA benchmarks on OS World, Web Arena, Web Voyager. Early user feedback on the Kua model and the tool has been super, super positive, so I'm really excited to see what all of you build with it. All right, so those are the three tools. And while we were building these tools and thinking of getting them out, we also wanted to take a first principles approach at designing the best API for these tools. We released chat completions, I think, in March 2023 alongside GPT 3.5 Turbo.
I think it gets more technical from this point. So let's just quickly go back to our agent and let me show you how I built this. So you can see it does look up web and looks up all the sources about a specific topic. It highlights the key findings here and sources from where it got the data. And then finally, some of the follow-up questions that you can ask for your agents. As far as the code is structured, and even if you're a non-developer and you're learning what agents are, I think knowing basics of agents code-wise would be actually very beneficial for you. So if this is the first time, and obviously this entire piece of code, like this entire project, will be open source and will be hosted on Git. So feel free to play around and understand what we're doing, or rather, try learning how these agents essentially work. So I have two projects, or rather two files set up. The research app, which is a basic Streamlit UI that is kind of showing you all of this, right? So this is very simple Streamlit UI. I'm not going to necessarily talk a lot about this, but what I'm interested to talk about is the super simple agent Python file, which leverages OpenAI's new agent pieces, right? So from agents, just like we do in Crew AI, so from Crew AI, we have agent runner function tool and so on and so forth. We now have agents from agent runner function tool, and this is from OpenAI. If you want to use this package, you will need to install OpenAI agents, which will essentially enable you to build these sorts of agents for the use case. Rest of the packages are pretty simple. We have the OpenAI for LLM, we have the async IO. In order to get the responses, we use Pydantic to ensure that our data is in a specific format and so on and so forth. Now what we do is this: from this point we create tools. The first tool that we create, and this is similar to the tasks that we have on Crew AI. So we create the first tool, which where the goal is to just search the web for information, and we use the model that was shown in the video, GPT-4o search preview, where the search context size will be medium and the simple query with respect to what we are looking at. We also pass date because the model context is of 2023 and we don't want the data coming from 2023. So we pass today's date by getting datetime.now and passing this in the input or our prompt. And then once we get the response, we print the response just to see how it looks like. But then we pass this along, breaking it down into citations and other completion pieces to give the final response of to build the final response of this specific tool, right? Then we have the summarize tool, where the goal is to kind of do the exact same thing, but this time based on the info that we get from search tool, we want to summarize that knowledge and generate a summary as the output. Then we have the save research note, where once the research is completed, we want to use a tool in order to save that data in our specific memory so that in the future we can re-refer it. And then we actually define the set of agents that we want to use, right? So there's the research agent, where you have the agent, the name of the agent, the instructions, which is similar to what we do in Crew AI. You can see these are pretty detailed instructions, and I'm not going to go through the instructions at this point, but what you do post that is you have tools assigned to this specific agent. So you have tools like search web, summarize text, and save research note. And then the output type, we want it to be like research report, right? And this is how the research report output should look like: title, summary, key findings, sources, follow-up questions, and so on. So once the agents are ready, what we essentially do is that we create a run research, which is similar to the crew of Crew AI. And in this, we have the agent with the model. We are also passing the model with the to the agent. The model is GPT-4o mini, which is the one that we initially assigned, or rather we assigned from the UI right here by selecting the model. And then we run the agent. Result is equal to runner.run, which is crew.execute crew, or we had a similar command in Crew AI where we do crew.result or something in order to get the result. So we pass the agent, then we pass the input. Now this is the task, I believe, which we do pass as a task in Crew AI. And then we have max number of turns, or the max number of steps the agent should run. And this is a simple main function that does return the final output once the run is completed. You can see that we are using async here because we want to respond in a more async format once the research is completed. So broadly, this is how the agentic workflow does look like. And I have some of the other agents here that I was experimenting with, which will also be available in the GitHub repo link that I shared. So please feel free to play around and try out if you want to. But this is how essentially the entire agentic workflow looks like at this point of time. So you have tools, you have agents, you have tasks, which is very similar to Crew AI, but it does give you more access to things like functions, web tools, and so on and so forth, which Crew AI does not, or rather it does, but because you're using OpenAI in this case, maybe it's more friendly for people who trust OpenAI more. For me, if I want to choose between Crew AI and OpenAI's agent framework right now, I think this agent framework is actually very new and the documentation is not very clear. While at the other hand, Crew AI is kind of well documented, it is a little bit more mature than this framework. So yeah, that is going to be it for the videos. Thank you so much and have a